It was sometime between noon and 1 o'clock when my phone rang for the third time that hour. The first 2 calls had been the usual, scam calls, those pathetic attempts to steal from the weak-minded. I had ignored them, but by the third, I had had enough. I was ready to tear into whoever was on the other end, to make them regret ever dialing my number. I swiped to answer, venom already on my tongue. Hello? But instead of some telemarketer or robotic voice, I heard something unexpected. A woman's cries, deep, broken sobs that carried a weight I didn't immediately understand. I paused, my annoyance shifting to intrigue. "Are you okay?" I asked, though I didn't really care. It was instinct, I suppose. Or maybe curiosity. The crying continued, and something about it gnawed at me. There was something familiar in the way she wept, in the desperation choking her breath. It was on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't place it. Then, finally, she spoke. "Pick me up." The words were a whisper at first, then firmer. "Pick me up. Pick me up." Over and over, like a mantra, like a command. My grip on the phone tightened. A game, perhaps? A prank? Or something more interesting? My mind buzzed with possibilities. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice steady. "You know who I am," she said. "Please, pick me up." That unease crawled up my spine, but I didn't let it show. The number, something about it seemed institutional, like it could be from a school. But that made no sense. "I think you have the wrong number," I said, waiting for some logical resolution, some closure to the oddity unfolding in my hands. But she wasn't listening. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, just pick me up." Something about the way she said it unsettled me, made my skin prickle. The reasonable thing to do was to end the call. And yet, what if she was in trouble? What if she was lost, stranded, desperate? What if she was someone's mistake, someone's problem, now accidentally mine? I should have hung up. I should have erased the moment from my mind and gone about my day. But instead, I asked again. "Are you okay?" She didn't respond. She just cried, loud, ragged sobs that went on for minutes. Long enough for my irritation to return, for my intrigue to curdle into something else. Then, just like that, the call ended. No explanation. No resolution. I stared at my phone for a long while before finally turning it off. The silence that followed was heavier than I expected. The air in my apartment felt thick, like the walls were pressing in, like something unseen had slipped through the connection and now lingered, watching. I got up and checked my door, making sure it was locked. My hands were steady, my face impassive, but inside, something crawled beneath my skin, something ancient and hungry. She didn't call back. The scammers stopped, too. The world, for all appearances, moved on. But I didn't. And I knew, somehow, that she hadn't either. The paranoia settled in slowly, like ink bleeding through paper. I told myself it was nothing, that I was being irrational, but the unease had already taken root. I started noticing small things. The way my phone screen would flicker for no reason. The way shadows stretched a little too far in the corners of my apartment. The way silence pressed against my ears, thick and expectant, as if something waited just beyond my perception. At night, I dreamed of her voice. "Pick me up." It was never a question. Always a command. In the dreams, I would find myself outside, standing in the middle of an empty road. The air was thick, the sky above an endless, suffocating gray. And then she would appear, a silhouette in the distance, unmoving, watching. I could never see her face, just the long, dark tangle of hair hanging over her shoulders. She never moved. She never spoke beyond those 3 words. Pick me up. And every time, I would wake up gasping, my sheets damp with sweat, my breath ragged. I stopped sleeping well. I stopped answering my phone altogether. The world outside became a blur, background noise to the creeping obsession growing inside me. Who was she? Why did her voice feel like a memory? Why couldn't I shake the feeling that I did know her? Then, one night, I woke up to a sound. My phone vibrating against the nightstand. A number I didn't recognize. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to answer. Every cell in my body screamed at me to let it ring. But my fingers moved on their own, drawn to the screen, compelled by something deeper than fear. I answered. Silence. Then, a breath. A trembling, broken whisper. Pick me up. The call ended. I sat there in the dark, the phone still pressed against my ear, the words echoing in my skull. And then I heard it. A knock at my door. Soft. Insistent. I turned to look, and for the first time in my life, I felt true fear. Because I already knew what I would see. I wanted to pretend I hadn't heard it. That it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But the knock came again. Soft. Insistent. I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper. My body refused to move, but my mind raced. Should I answer? Should I ignore it? Should I call someone? The thought made me laugh. Who would I call? Who would believe me? The air in the room felt colder. A weight settled on my chest, thick and suffocating. I glanced at my phone, fingers trembling as I hovered over the screen. No new calls. No messages. Just silence. Then, the knock changed. No longer soft. No longer patient. It became frantic, urgent, each hit against the wood rattling through my bones. I shot up from my bed. This wasn't normal. I forced myself to move toward the door, my feet heavy against the floor. The apartment was dark, only the dim glow from a street lamp outside offering any light. My breath was shallow, each step feeling like a mistake. I reached for the peephole. A single glance. That was all I needed. Just to confirm. A figure stood outside. The same silhouette from my dreams. Long hair. Unmoving. Waiting. My body seized with terror. My mind screamed at me to back away, to lock the door, to pretend none of this was happening. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Then she did. A slow tilt of the head, as if she knew I was watching. My breath hitched. My fingers trembled on the doorknob. Then. A whisper, so close it might as well have been inside my head. Pick me up. The lights in my apartment flickered. And then, my door handle started to turn. My breath caught in my throat as the door handle twisted, slow and deliberate. I took a step back, my body frozen between fight and flight. The air felt thick, charged with something unseen, something unnatural. The handle stopped turning. Silence pressed in around me. For a moment, I thought, hoped, that whatever was outside had given up. Then came the scratching. Soft at first, like fingernails lightly grazing the wood. Then deeper, more urgent, like claws digging into the door. The sound made my skin crawl, my stomach twist into knots. I wanted to run, to hide, but where? There was nowhere to go. I backed further into the apartment, my heart hammering. My phone was still in my hand, but I didn't dare look away from the door. I knew that if I took my eyes off it, something would happen, something worse than the scratching, worse than the whispering voice. Then, as if reading my thoughts, my phone buzzed violently in my palm. The vibration startled me, nearly making me drop it. I glanced down, just for a second. A new message. Unknown number, pick me up. I nearly threw the phone across the room. The scratching stopped. Silence again. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the presence of something else. Something watching. Waiting. I felt it before I heard it. A breath. Cold and damp, right behind me. I turned. And the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room, thick and absolute. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out everything but the suffocating silence. I tried to move, to run, but my limbs felt sluggish, like I was wading through something heavy, something unseen. Then. A whisper. Right against my ear. Pick me up. A cold, clammy hand brushed against my shoulder. I lurched forward, blindly stumbling into the furniture, desperate to put distance between me and whatever had just touched me. My fingers fumbled for my phone, for any source of light, but when the screen flickered on, it wasn't my home screen staring back at me. It was a face. Distorted, hollow-eyed, twisted in agony. Staring right at me. I screamed and dropped the phone, its glow flickering as it hit the floor. The moment it left my hand, the air shifted, heavy, charged with something primal. A low, guttural whisper slithered through the darkness. You know who I am. The scratching at the door started again, no, not just at the door. From the walls. The ceiling. The floor beneath my feet. 1,000 nails clawing, scraping, closing in. The shadows twisted and pulsed, moving even though there was no light to cast them. I reached for the door, desperate to escape, but the moment my fingers grazed the handle, the whisper came again. Too late. The door burst open. A violent gust of freezing air knocked me back, and the last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me whole was a shape, tall, with hollow eyes that burned through the abyss. And then. Nothing. I woke up somewhere else. The sky was gray. The road stretched endlessly in both directions. No landmarks. No signs. Just emptiness. And then I saw her. The same figure from my dreams, standing in the distance, long hair tangled and swaying in the wind. This time, she moved. One slow step forward. Then another. I opened my mouth to speak, to demand answers, but the words died in my throat. My body felt different. Heavy. Like it wasn't mine anymore. I looked down at my hands. They weren't my hands. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking fingers. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Pick me up. The realization settled over me like a shroud. I wasn't me anymore. I was her now. And somewhere, in another life, someone was about to get a call. The cycle had begun again.